Good day, YouTubers, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls from all around the world. We got the first sail sewed onto the yard arm, and we just start with a knot over here and then use a thread needle and make this string almost 3 times as long as the yard arm is, so as we wrap it we don't run out when we get over to the right side and tie another knot. And then the plans had us put this bearing on, so using the larger rope, the black, we installed those, what do they call them? Yeah, that's a code name. BRB. Yeah, BRB. Bearing retaining bracket. And then the balls in there are the bearings. And what that is designed to do is, as the yard arm is pulled up or down on the mast, that bearing rolls against the side of the mast and creates it for easier up or down motion of the yard arm. So I think these two stay on there, and that's what ties to the mast, and it'll lay between the mast and the yard arm like that. And there may be some other ropes that are part of that, but this is what they've shown in the plan so far. So we started with picking the yard arm that they had chosen. They got them labeled Y4, Y1, Y7. So that's the label for the correct yard arm. And then we picked Y1, a certain size and length. And we sewed it on there like they show here. And then we install the brackets and the bearing balls one at a time. So I'll make note here that the size of this rope that they're telling us to use, the CT3, is really almost exactly the same size as the hole in the bearings and in those brackets. So obviously feeding that through there is tough without putting super glue on the ends of the ropes to make them stiff and smooth on the end. And even then, some of the bearings were a problem getting them to go onto the thread. But if you put the glue on there right and make sure the end of the thread is nice and straight and there's no fray sticking out of it, then it'll work. But it's just a very cumbersome way to get them on there because of the thread size compared to the holes. I even drilled out the holes in the brackets. There's 4 holes in each bracket at 1 millimeter, which is the diameter of the rope, and I drilled them out to 1.2 millimeters with a drill bit. And one of my brackets cracked as I was doing that, but the bearings being made out of glass don't have near as much resistance to being threaded as the brackets did. So we got it in there on this first one. So now we're going to go to the next thing in the plans, which, as you can see, is adding all the blocks to the sail. We got 10 blocks that we got to tie onto that sail, and 2 of them have those long tails. I think those are for changing the angle of the sail to the wind as it rests on the mast from 90 degrees or perpendicular to 45-degree angle or whatever, depending on the wind. So 1 on each corner here, 2 at the top, and 2 near the middle. And they give us dimensions of 25 millimeters away from the center line, so we know where to tie those at. So I've already pre-drilled the hole in 10 of these blocks. So now I just got to thread them up and sew them on to the different locations on there. And then one sail will be ready after we get that step done, which is still going to take some time because each block is a little tedious to work with. So His Royal Highness Mufasa says hello to the world. He's stuck out here with me today for a little while, but we will survive. I did turn the ship around and got the next board installed so I can thread up the rat lines on this far side. We're going to do that one and this one, and then we'll cut the board to fit up here and do those two. And that'll be it for rat lines once we get that taken care of. So let me get some blocks tied up here. What'd you say? Okay, that's what the first yardarm sail look like. Got all the 10 blocks tied up and tied on there. So once that dries, because we got glue and the knots and stuff, it wants us to mount that. The next step is mounting it after we build it on the bow sprit. And you can see there how that bearing goes. So I might have to create some slack or retie that bearing so it's got enough slack to get to the back side of the bowsprit, because it's pretty tight up to the yardarm, and I think I'm going to need a little more slack to tie that. I'm surprised. This is a lesson in you should always look forward in the prints. Yeah, there's a little slop there, 4 to 6 millimeters. So I think mine's a little tighter than that. I might have to retie that to get it to mount on the yardarm or on the bowsprit. So after that, there's some blocks and tackles that get tied up. It looks like we got to add some more blocks. Yep, we got to add some more blocks onto the bow sprit itself, the other end of those tie points. So more blocks to drill out. Well, at least we know we're making headway here. We're getting our first sail mounted. We'll have to watch these prints real close. It looks like we want something to tie off on some baling pins there from somewhere on the sail. So let's get that prepped, ready to mount. Okay, so we got the sail mounted on there with the bearing tied off, and then our first set of blocks down to our first baling pin. And then we've tied a second set of blocks on here in the middle, and that's tied to a block that's on the long tail on the top of the yardarm. And now I've got to get this tied off on the baling pin. And each one of these baling pin ties gets to be a little challenging, especially with this extra thread here. So I'm getting this rope underneath, maybe. So what I want to do is get it to hook around the bottom of that baling pin. And pull the slack out of it. And then up here on the top, we make a loop and then turn that loop upside down, hold it in place. See how it came off there? I want it to stay upside down. Oop. Try that again. I'm gonna hold the slack, make a loop, I've got some tying tools, but I haven't really tried them yet. This here is a hook, and this one is like a pusher with a little notch on it, so you can go down underneath stuff and pick it out. So we will try these tools because it's awkward with the tweezers in there. So we got that wrapped once. Now we need to make a loop, but I don't want the slack to come loose. So let me grab my reverse tweezers there. Yeah, that'll work. So now let's try to make this loop. So there's a loop, and then put it on the baling pin, turning the loop upside down and not letting the slack escape. There's a little loop of slack there, but it doesn't look like it's going to come off. But once you get that loop turned upside down and pull it tight on there, you can add the glue to it. And that's a standard. I need to show this in a big format so it's easy to understand. But that's a standard wrap around sort of your boat's at the boat dock, and you come up to the cleat. Don't just wrap it around and expect that to stay. You wrap it around, and then the second time your loop, before you pull it tight on the wrap, turn it upside down and then pull it tight over the cleat, and it sort of locks itself. And on the boat ramp you can do that 2 or 3 times, and it's easy to take loose, and at the same time it won't come off while you're going to the truck to get your trailer. Your boat won't float away. So I want to get that rope underneath the baling pin rack. We're taking the slack out. It's tied off up here and comes down and then goes down to the rack. So we got it around one time and all the slack is out. Now we can use the reverse tweezers to grab that so the slack doesn't come loose. So now we need to simply make a loop like that, and if you grab it where the two cross each other out here, and then turn it upside down and wrap it around the baling pin. This thread is 25% polyester, or 25% cotton and 75% polyester. So it's a little harder to work with. Oop, almost had it. You see how I grab it there between the two where they cross each other, turn it upside down, put it over the baling pin, and then pull it tight. See how it's staying tight by itself? And for the sailors, that knot is easy to undo, and they can pull the baling pin out and release the line, or they can release slack on the line. So after that dries, we'll cut these tails off, and we got the first 4 out of the 10 blocks up on the top part of the sail. I'll have to look forward in the prints to see where this one goes and where this one goes and where that one goes. So we got 6 more, and I've already went ahead and pre-drilled 10 more blocks, because for every one that's on the sail that we made in the yardarm process, there's probably going to be another block mounted to the ship somewhere before it gets to the baling pin rack. Sometimes not, but most of the time yes. So let's look forward in the plans and see what is next. So yeah, he's pointing at this block that's on the very corner, and we're taking that block up to the one in the middle. So we'll be tying it off on the yard arm, coming down, up, go through the second block, and then that's why we have the big monitors, so we can actually see, because even that laptop screen isn't big enough. It looks like it goes down to the baling pin. So that'll do the next one. Tie it off up here, come down, go through this one, go back up through that one, and then down to the next baling pin. And that's the other reason I don't install all my baling pins after we get done making them or staining them or whatever, is because they're in the way of your tie job as you go to tying these off. So if you leave them all out and just put them in as you need them, the space next to it is open for you to get your rope in there and tie it off. It makes it a little simpler. So let's get the next one threaded up, ready. Okay, so we got that first sail on, and now the second one goes on the bow sprit above the first one, and we got that all laced up onto the yard arm. Got our bearing ready to tie onto the mast pole. I think I'm off to move that rope a little further over. Got all our blocks that we needed on there. So we'll install that next. And of course we got this first one on the front, the bowsprit, and all the rigging that was in the plans. All the rigging that was in the plans is done, except for these two ropes here. We got a rope from this tail that goes up through a block on the shroud and into the third cannon hole, and then it's going to tie off on a cleat. And I just glued them cleats on this morning with the tight bond wood glue, so I want to wait till tomorrow before I tie these on both sides. And that'll keep as the wind blows on the sail, that'll keep pressure on the bottom of the sail. So the next sail is going to mount up here, and we got it ready to go on. We just got to double check everything in our plans. Yeah, they got that offset a little bit from the center. That's what I should have done. I didn't see that. But I can cut, because there's a loop there, I can cut it off of the yard arm and tie a new loop off to the side a little bit from center. So there's two blocks that they don't show in the plans where they go to. And even this next sail, those same two blocks, maybe they'll have something on them in the next screen, but this first sail I put on does not show anything hooked to them blocks yet. So maybe later on we get into the fine details of all the rigging for that first sail, and those two blocks don't have any ropes on them. Now look at that real carefully. Make sure, because I would think, you know, logically that would go up, either up here or up here or something. These are holding it so they can raise it, the yard arm up and down, but I don't know what these are for. So there's one on each side. That plans did not show a rigging line in, so we'll figure that out. But our next sail for the front will be installed after I move that little center line bearing thing, and then we'll run some more rigging for that front one. The top one on the front bow sprit. So we did make progress this week. We got 2 sails those bearings are a little bit of a trick. You got to put super glue on the end of the rope and make sure there's no frays, and get that through them holes in them bearings, that little wooden piece, bearing brackets. Thanks for watching.